with you, so let's get it started. We have a lot of top stories, including the shutdown to get to, and some breaking news that we are following out of Frederick County as well, with the so many things going on with the SNAP benefits, the flight cancellations, and folks are stressed out about flights in general when they're traveling for work or the holiday. So breaking news in Frederick County, emergency crews on the scene of a possible carbon monoxide leak at St. Peter's Church, and this was in Liberty Town, and you can see the footage right there. Sky Fox over the scene. This happened in the last hour. We're told at least 25 patients are being checked out, and crews reportedly elevated CO readings inside the church. Again, breaking news in Frederick County, emergency crews on the scene. This is a possible carbon monoxide leak at St. Peter's Church in Liberty Town. So keep it locked here at Fox 5. And then getting to Maryland, Governor Wes Moore announcing expanded support for residents in response to the government shutdown that we have been covering for you. Federal employees working without pay will now be eligible for a second $700 interest-free loan. They can also get free rides on local buses, light rail, and metro services. Governor Moore also signed an executive order sending $10.1 million to the state's low-income energy assistance benefits program. And Tony, with the shutdown, I mean, never imagined that it would last this long, and
Nobody
folks
did.
Really are struggling.
I'll tell you, I mean, this is definitely showcasing kind of what, we say it in history class called federalism, where you have the federal government and the state governments, and what's the relationship between that? And again, federal taxes go both ways. But this is really what you're seeing right now. The shutdown is showing that a lot of states implement these things, and they have resources at their disposal, but they are running dry quickly because, again, these funds can't last much longer, including the federal emergency funding that's in there. So it's only about $5-10 billion at the state level. It's maybe a couple $100 million. That could run out, and that could be used for other instances. This shutdown looks like it's staying for a while, so this could be a big strain on the state governments as well. But it's an interesting topic to be looking out for. And also the Frederick County story is just so sad. But looking at that, and when the clocks turn back, they always say check the monoxide detectors and check your fire detectors, because again, they may have some issues with detecting once the clocks go back. It's some technological issues. That's just a big thing. Always check those detectors, monoxide and fire, to make sure that your house or church or business is okay, because that's just, you don't want to see that. It's so scary. And just, prayers for everybody at St. Peter's Church tonight.
Exactly, and I know you mentioned the shutdown. It's also showing the community's generosity as well when we speak about the food banks that are distributing food and other resources. Again, I want to mention here, definitely download the Fox Local app if you are a furloughed worker that is watching us right now, because we have all the resources that you need at your fingertips. We have the listings of where the food giveaways are happening and other resources about paying your bills and putting those bills on a temporary hold, also, and the interest-free loan programs that I spoke about. We have links to that on our website, fox5dc.com as well, because we want to make people aware that even though we're in tough times right now, we are here for them, and we're going to try to do whatever we can to make this time easier for you. Again, we also, on a live zone around in the afternoon, this afternoon, we also saw a lot of folks locally showing up and setting up, drives and food giveaways as well locally.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is, again, we're seeing some of the worst in government and the worst in, of course, D.C. is the capital, but we're seeing the best of the community that represents D.C. and around all of us. I mean, again, whether it be the capital area food banks and influencers and TV people are putting the word out. We have, volunteers, everybody's, working these stations, from whether it be Capital Food Bank or other parts of the city and around here. It truly is, again, it's a miracle of people. And again, this is, those moments, Mr. Rogers always told us, look for the helpers, and the helpers are showing up, and that just gives me some hope in humanity as we as we go into the holiday season with Thanksgiving coming upon us.
I know you said it seems like it's never ending. Did you ever see it going this way, Tony, when it first started?
I did, because I have never seen a shutdown where there wasn't at least some negotiations happening in parallel and they just ran out of time. This was truly, there was no debate at all. It was a stalemate. Republicans said our way or the highway. Democrats are saying, nope, we want the ACA subsidies at least. And they've been dug in since, 38 days now? And usually when you see other shutdowns or government spending limit increases and like the debt ceiling stuff, Usually there's negotiations behind the scenes. They're getting close to a deal. Maybe 5-6 days later they'll get it done. There has been no chatter at all, even into day 38. So it's crazy. I didn't expect it to be this long, but I expect it to be long. I mean, now it's just, I think as things start to unravel from airlines to food inspections to SNAP, as things start to really, as all like the breakers are done, state funding, federal emergency resources, it'll probably get done at some point.
And I know you mentioned the SNAP benefits you were covering and what you're watching. So some of your top stories include the shutdown coverage and the gridlock, and of course some happy stuff as well about Glen Powell. So let's get right to that.
You got it. So this is our major set the tone rundown. I always have a shutdown. Set the tone rundown tonight, and we begin with a major legal development from the Trump administration. The administration has formally asked the Supreme Court today to block a lower court order requiring it to resume full SNAP benefit payments during the ongoing government shutdown. The administration argues the executive branch should have discretion over spending during a funding lapse. The Supreme Court could decide this case or decide whether to take it up or decide it as early as next week. So watch out for that, folks, with the shutdown in parallel. In Washington, of course, the political stalemate continues. Senate Democrats offered a proposal today, though, to reopen the government in exchange for a 1-year extension of Affordable Care Act subsidies. But Republicans rejected it almost immediately. They say they won't agree to long-term policy changes in a short-term spending bill fight. The shutdown, of course, now sits at day 38. That gridlock is starting to hit the skies even more, folks. The Wall Street Journal reports that if the shutdown continues another week, flight cancellations could rise above that 10% threshold and get to 20% by a week from now nationwide. Heading into the Thanksgiving season, watch for that, folks. In higher education, Cornell University reached a deal with the Trump administration today to restore more than $250 million in frozen federal research funding. The university will pay a $30 million fine and invest another $30 million in agricultural research. School officials say it's a compromise that protects jobs and keeps key research programs alive. Overseas, the U.S. is stepping up its involvement in the Gaza ceasefire. American teams are now coordinating humanitarian efforts on the ground, working to maintain a fragile ceasefire and ensure food and medical aid reaches civilians. Officials say the expanded U.S. presence is meant to help stabilize the region and prevent a renewed conflict. Back home, the White House announced that it's calling a major breakthrough on prescription drug prices. Yesterday, the administration struck a deal with Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk to lower the monthly cost of popular weight loss and diabetes medications from roughly $1,000 to between $250 and $350 for many Americans, including those on Medicare and Medicaid. Those drugs, of course, Mounjaro, and again, those weight loss drugs that we've heard about all throughout the last couple of years may be getting a price decrease coming up. In the entertainment world, Brooke Burks says she's officially closing her Dancing with the Stars chapter, announcing she won't appear in the show's 20th anniversary special. Meanwhile, Hollywood is buzzing about Edgar Wright's upcoming remake of The Running Man starring Glen Powell, which critics are calling sharp and stylish overall. Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson are also earning strong praise for their new film, Die, My Love, a dark psychological drama that's already getting early awards buzz as we head into the new year soon. That movie looks really good, by the way. I'm looking forward to seeing it. On the social media front, the live story trend continues to dominate on TikTok. Creators are ditching polished edits and filters, instead posting raw, in-the-moment clips, such as walking home, cooking dinner, reflecting on life as it happens. The hashtag now has more than 190 million views, with audiences saying it feels refreshing and real in a space that's often overly curated. So kind of a return of the day-in-the-life content, but a little even more granular and live. And in a growing digital controversy, actress Blake Lively's legal team has sent subpoenas to more than 100 influencers and commentary channels, accusing them of spreading false claims about her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni and the effects of it. Legal experts say the case could be a major precedent for influencer accountability and online speech. Definitely a part of my world. We'll be watching that for sure. And finally, as part of the rundown tonight, of course, the uplifting story as usual. This story is capturing hearts nationwide. In California, a community of firefighters in Sonoma County is helping rebuild the home of a colleague who lost everything in the wildfires this past year. More than 50 volunteers have been working nights and weekends to frame walls, pour concrete, and furnish the homes before the holiday season coming up. The homeowner says he never expected the people he worked beside every day to be the ones lifting him back up. And it's a powerful reminder that even in times of loss, community spirit still burns strong. And again, we, of course, continue to pray for all the individuals out in California who, again, are still, almost a year later, are dealing with the effects of those wildfires. And again, the building permits are a little bit slow, but the communities are stepping up their best effort to get these homes rebuilt.
Yeah, I can't believe it's really been that long. So we really
I know.
need to think about those communities out there. But those lighter stories that you mentioned, especially about TikTok and influencers, really have to be careful now, especially when people are making content every single day.
Oh, yeah.
Especially what you're saying, and Blake Lively, everything that she went through this year with the controversy with Justin Baldoni. So
Yes.
folks really have to be careful about what they're saying online when you are making those videos about these big celebrities.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, even in my space, again, this is what I do, social media side. I mean, I try to keep things not too newsy, because here's the thing about it. You don't want to get your facts wrong.
Exactly.
And then if you do, again, that could lead to, again, depending on the following that you have, the amount of money you're making on videos, when you're monetizing videos about news and about other people, that's when you kind of get into a gray area, because you're making money off a false story. Again, it's hard to prove defamation, but you want to be careful. You want to cite your sources. Again, we do it here in the newsroom. You also want to cite it, again, as well as doing content, whether it's news or pop culture, or you're doing some deep dives. You want to make sure every fact is checked and your eyes are your eyes are dotted and your T's are crossed.
Yeah, and there she is right there. I mean, this is still everywhere, but it was a really big deal. Both of them were making allegations against each other.
Right.
It's a huge court case, and I didn't know about all this information I have now on Blake Lively. But again, when you are getting on TikTok, I think, kind of like what you said, kind of stay away from that type of content. You have a huge following. What kind of advice do you have for content creators that want to do what you're doing and want to get those number, those followings, but they should not, kind of risk their morals or risk losing their platforms? So do you think it's better to focus on making content about your personal life, or just something else rather than celebrity gossip? Yeah,
no, again, I always say be authentic, and that means being vulnerable. Really, when you're talking about your life, really get into the things you're thinking about, the things that maybe are making you uncomfortable, what your life routine's looking like, and just to make it as real as you possibly can, because that's what matters to people. They want to see relatable content. But when it comes to anything newsworthy, I mean, I just think that the best thing to do is try to put out positive content. I mean, we don't need any more rage bait. We don't need things that are going to pit people against each other. If you want to cover it, like from a news perspective, go ahead, but make sure you cite your sources, whether it be from the Wall Street Journal or from local journalists here at Fox or other outlets. And the biggest thing is, try not to stir the pot. Again, I know it gets views and it can get followers, but try to be a positive witness where you can. That's
positivity.
The biggest thing I would say.
It's all about positivity.
Not empty positivity though. You want to be uplifting, but not everything is perfect. No, you want to make sure that you're bringing good insight, but don't be overly negative.
Absolutely. And as we gear towards talking about the shutdown again, we do have a guest that is joining us right now to talk to us about the shutdown and those cancellations with the flights that folks are facing right now. And so we want to talk more about that. So joining us now is Sam Mirajovsky, who is a host of a conservative talk show based in Las Vegas. Welcome to the show. We're glad that you're here.
Hey guys, great to be with you.
How are we doing?
And so, we want to speak to you about the current condition of the shutdown. And as I asked Tony earlier, did you ever expect it to go this long, this duration? I mean, it's been more than a month now.
No, I was listening to your commentary, and I think I'm with you on this. It's taking a lot longer than I expected, and it's getting bad, and particularly here in Vegas. I mean, look at this. We just are canceling hundreds of flights a day going into a week where we're expecting visitors to have in a couple weeks Formula One coming to town, which is a very major weekend here in town, and it's going to disrupt that event. I mean, these are real losses that are happening, not to mention everybody that isn't getting paid. So this is turning into a real crisis.
And when we look at the overall, the structure of this shutdown post the elections this past Tuesday and President Trump's comments about, hey, we may need to move with the filibuster, do you think that move, even though there is some resistance in the Senate right now, could that be a potential thing that the president may resort to at some point if this gets even further in the next week?
Well, the president wants to filibuster, right? And that would basically do away with the 60 votes required to have the Senate move on and vote on a bill. I think that a couple of things. One, I mean, Trump can want it all he wants, but he needs to get the votes in the Senate for it. And the votes just as of right now aren't there. I think it's far more likely that we get what is it now? We're at 3 maybe Democrats that have signed on, including one of our senators here from Nevada. Far more likely to get 4 more senators signing on for an end to this impasse, I think, than it is to do away with the filibuster in the short term. But if we don't get those 4 votes, I think every few days that go by, real pain going and happening will motivate Republicans to perhaps support doing it with the filibuster. And that, that's a caution to the Democrats, of course. You can go hardline on this, but it could result in a really major problem.
And do you think with the infusion of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who are saying, hey, we need to do the ACA subsidies, kind of folks from more of the, again, who would usually be on the MAGA side of the party, some even on the more moderate side are saying, hey, let's get together and have the ACA subsidy extension. Do you see that could potentially be a discussion point in the coming days with some of these, not cracks, but just some voices speaking out on the Republican side in favor of it?
Yeah, great question. And obviously that was the talk of the day today, right? I mean, there was a proposal that went through the Senate on a 1-year extension for the subsidies, and it didn't happen. And I want to remind everybody that it was a Democrat Senate that passed these subsidies to begin with, and a Democratic House. And what happened is even they couldn't agree at the time to make these subsidies permanent or to extend them beyond 3 years. So, there's, I mean, as I understand today, that proposal has died. Now, could in a week, if this continues, could there be an appetite for it, for an off ramp like that? Sure, anything's possible, particularly as this thing continues.
And in your perspective, in your view, with flights being canceled, and if they are cut back significantly, and if this issue of the flights being cut back continues for weeks from now, what do you think are going to be the broader implications, especially national security implications, for a major hub like DC?
Well, I think today, flights in DCA at Reagan National have been trimmed down to 12 an hour. I mean, 12 an hour, right? I mean, that's crazy. National security is one thing. It's going to crash the economy. Our economy relies on people traveling. It relies on goods moving around the country. This is going to affect, e-commerce. We're going into the holidays. This is the biggest, most important time economically for people to shop online. So, I think the implications here are at first are economic. And what I'm worried about is that the Democrats see this as upside politically because, they benefit politically from an economy that struggles. They would like to go into the midterms with a damaged economy, running against a failing economy and proving themselves the alternative. So I'm just worried there's an incentive right now for the Democrats to dig their heels in and to create a real mess. It worries me.
And when looking at the overall midterm outlook with this shutdown, in terms of how the GOP and the overall conservative movement see this, how could this impact potentially positively for Republicans if this goes longer, again, in their strategy for the midterms? Again, you mentioned the overall, the more liberal position, or Democrats are saying, hey, we can run against a bad economy. Is there a way for Republicans to get a win out of this long stalemate as well? Not to make it too political, but just curious about the strategy behind it.
No, the strategy is fascinating, and it's ultimately and unfortunately it is a game. I think it comes down to the filibuster. The best move that the Republicans would have is to take charge of this and do an end run around the Democrats. Remember what happened on Tuesday during the election. The Democrats caused the shutdown, and that's my opinion, right? I mean, they didn't vote for the clean CR. There was a clean CR on the table. They dug their heels in. 3 Democrats went with the Republicans. But it wasn't enough to get to the 60 threshold. And then the next step is the Democrats ran on, coming up before that election, on a platform blaming Republicans for the shutdown and pointing out that the Republicans are in charge of the White House, they're in charge of the Senate, they're in charge of Congress, and that the Republicans weren't doing anything to fix it. And the Republicans could and probably should have earlier said, all right, we'll see you, and we will do something to fix it. We'll do away with the filibuster, and we'll vote in the clean CR, and we'll reopen the government. We'll show you that we're the adults in charge. And if they did that, it could be a huge win for the Republicans, and of course would help Trump with other agenda items and getting things across the finish line that were popular in 24, that people want to have done and want to see have done. So there's some upside here, but it would require the Senate Republicans in particular to face this filibuster issue, and I'm not sure they, as of today, have the appetite for that.
Interesting. And when we look at the overall GOP brand, President Trump was talking about the affordability word and how Republicans weren't selling the agenda well enough before these elections that happened on Tuesday. What do you sense is going to be the strategy change from Republicans as they go into the midterms to maybe talk more about affordability, to emphasize more of what the president has done? And also, could you see the president kind of using the executive order route, again, especially with things like drug prices and more kind of tangible things, to get things across the finish line in this type of gridlock?
Well, he already started that yesterday with some drug pricing announcements, which are helpful. Republicans need to get on this messaging, importantly, because obviously a conservative agenda, for example, as it relates to healthcare, the story ought to be here that Obamacare, the ACA, is broken and it's fundamentally not working, and prices are going up and up. And the reason we need subsidies is because the whole thing just doesn't work. And if Republicans got together, congressional Republicans got together with the Trump administration and came up with an alternative, with a fix, with a legislative fix, not just, executive orders, but actually said, here is our alternative. Here is how we are going to increase competition among insurance companies to drive down prices. Here is a 10-step plan. Here is what we propose, and did something that then affirmatively drove down costs. That would be an unstoppable force in the midterms. So Republicans can't just say, no, we're not doing this. They've got to do something. You're absolutely right about that.
Interesting. The word affirmative is one thing I picked up on. That's a really good point.
And how does this shutdown disruption, we're seeing the flights being canceled, compared to other disruptions in federal agencies? You've covered so many of these shutdowns. Do you see things differently this time around?
Well, in terms of just the length of time, and that we're still nowhere near an end on this. Every morning I wake up and I think this is the day, particularly once the election passed. So is it? It's enormously disruptive. Now, you live in D.C. You know firsthand. I was in D.C. a couple weeks ago, and it was still early on in this thing, but it was already. Everything is closed. Every museum is closed. Every office is working on a skeleton crew. People aren't getting paid. That's money that's not going into the economy. And there's just a ripple effect here. And undoubtedly it's a disaster. It's a slow moving disaster. And I am worried, candidly.
I know you mentioned that you think the overall fault of this shutdown, and that continues to go on, is on the Democrats, but why do you think that way? Do you think it could be both sides that are just not seeing eye to eye right now? Do you completely feel that it's the Democrats that are to blame for this?
Well, because the Democrats are the one denying the votes, right? That's it. And they've said this flat out. I don't think this is controversial at all. The person responsible for the shutdown is the person not voting for a clean CR. In the past, Republicans have been obstructionists. I'm clear-eyed about this. When Republicans are in the minority and they're denying the votes, then that's when the Republicans are responsible for it. But here the Democrats, they could have found 7 members of the Senate to vote for this. They found 3, missing 4. It's basic math. And here we are. So, again, the Democrats have come out and said, yeah, we want concessions. We want things. And we're holding the country hostage to get those things. Now, you either support that because you support what it is that the Democrats want to get, and that's fine. And you can be upfront about that. I don't think there's any issue with that. But as far as Republicans passing and repeatedly passing, and congressional Republicans passing in ample time a clean continuing resolution that would have bought 7 weeks to negotiate out these terms while everybody was getting paid, is something that could have happened, and it was in the Democrats' power to have that happen. So to me, it's I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Absolutely, Sam. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciated your insight and just talking to us about the government shutdown, the FAA cancellations. Really appreciate it, and nice meeting you virtually.
Well, the pleasure was mine. Take care, guys. Have a good
Take
night.
care.
Again, we have been covering that plane crash in Kentucky, and we have more information on that for you. So let's go right to that right now.
Information we reported was that the FAA ADS-B data indicated a GPS altitude of 475 feet. When considering how FAA ADS-B data is reported, this equates to approximately 100 feet above ground level. This is what we consider to be the most accurate, but I will also say we're corroborating that with the data from the flight data recorder, which is still being validated and will take several days to be validated. Now, I am going to let you know this will be our final on-scene briefing for the media. We will continue to have team members here working on not only the investigation, but the additional work that needs to be done. We will be providing additional media updates through our press releases and investigative updates through our headquarters in Washington. This is a normal practice for us. It's an ability to make sure that we're prioritizing all the resources in the appropriate place. So with that, we'll try to take some questions. None? Yes, ma'am.
Valerie Chin with WDRB News. Some residents are concerned about oil and black sludge in the waterways around the crash site. What is the NTSB doing about those issues?
So the question is regarding the environmental concerns around the site. The NTSB does not investigate the environmental concerns around there, nor is it responsible for upkeeping it. I do know that the Kentucky Division of Water, the EPA, and other people are on site. They are actively working on that. They are cognizant. I know the emergency management coordinator has mentioned this several times, but it's not really in the lane of the NTSB investigation for us to even speculate. Tom?
Mr. Inman, can you talk more about the alarm bell that was heard in the cockpit prior to the crash? Any idea of what that alarm was?
Well, I said that there was a persistent bell. We need to take that FDR data as well to be able to, because there can be numerous different types of alarms and what they may mean. Obviously, we have a working theory right now, and we're trying to validate that against the FDR. That, with the corroborating evidence in regard to the video that we have, is obviously leading us to, we know that there was a fire occurring. But the call out and the alarm could also be a mixture of several different things. So I don't want to speculate too far. The FDR data and the examination by the groups on that will give us a lot more granularity and be able to help paint a better picture. Yes, sir.
I just want to get some clarity on the timeline of events. So you said 37 seconds into the plane moving was when the alarm bell took off, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the remaining...
Sorry. His question was, at 37 seconds, that's when the first repeating bell, I'm not using the word alarm, repeating bell.
So how much time in the seconds that followed did the pilots have to react?
So the question was, how much time did they have to react? Well, again, the recording lasted until 25 seconds after the initial persistent bells. That was the end of the recording. We believe that right now that the end of the recording was the final point of impact. But you also have to remember we need to go back and look at FDR data, which could have some other factors. There's over 400 data sets in the flight data recorder, which will tell us additional information. Obviously, these have some power supply redundancies, but at some point, there's just no other information to feed into it. So we provide that just to give you a timeline, but it is not the exact framing of when the accident occurred and how it occurred. Yes, sir.
Conrad Deluche, WHAS 11 here in Louisville. Asking specifically about how your investigation moving forward is going to look over the coming days and weeks, especially thinking about the debris field that is over Grade Lane.
Yeah, the question was about the continuation of the investigation, Grade Lane in that area. Again, we know that later today or tomorrow there will be heavy equipment In aviation crashes, there are what are called salvers, aviation salvers. They're highly specialized in working accident scenes because they know exactly what can be picked up without damaging it and how to do that. And they have some specific equipment needs. Those are being brought in. They were en route. Surveys were done 2 days ago to make sure we had the right equipment. Once those come in, those will actually enable us to lift and move more things, and that will help along with the investigation itself. The one complicating factor for this scene is because of the type of businesses where this impacted, is you're seeing a lot of combination of similar metals or alloys, and so we'll have to distinguish between aircraft parts and those which may already be on the ground. But we've already made plans to try to move as much of that off-site and then evaluate what we need to in a different location, which will hopefully free up more of the debris area. We're cognizant of the disruptions of a lot of the businesses around there and the fact that people need to go back in and check on their property and be able to find and look for some of their lost items as well. Yes, sir.
Has anything about this investigation been atypical compared to past investigations?
So the question is anything about this investigation been atypical versus past NTSB investigations? I would say every investigation is completely unique, and we walk into it from the very first step saying we have no premise. All we can do is take the facts that are presented to us, analyze them, and then validate and try to come out with the best investigative report. So the NTSB's done 150,000 aircraft investigations in its history. We have a very good process. We have a lot of great experts. We're being supported by a lot of subject matter experts, but every one of them is completely different.
Again, that was an update on the death toll for the UPS cargo plane crash that took place in northern Kentucky. So that was the latest with that. Now, reports say that death toll has reached around 13 people. Again, really tragic news there coming out of northern Kentucky, and we are going to be following this story, and we're following breaking news as well. Right after the break, we'll have an update on breaking news about which Kennedy is running for Congress. We'll have that, and we have a really special guest joining us on our show after this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Zone Prime Time, and we have a lot to share. Right now it's 9:34, and we have some breaking news, right?
We sure do. So in the world of politics, Politico is reporting tonight that JFK's grandson, former President John F. Kennedy's grandson, Jack Schlossberg, will announce his run for Congress in New York's 12th district this coming week or at some point soon. But Politico has that story, and they reported it just recently here on the Live Now for Fox, and also we're bringing it to Live Zone Primetime now. This is a pretty open primary. Remember, this is for Jerry Nadler's seat, the Democrat who retired just a few months ago so he's going to announce his retirement at the end of his term, and did that a couple of months ago, and it has been flooded with a lot of potential candidates, including influencer Cam Caskey of The Bulwark in New York, has also announced that he's filing papers, so a lot of young Democratic talent getting into this race, and it could showcase really this divide between the more establishment Democrats and the younger progressive wing of the party that wants to really take over and be, the new leaders in Congress and around the country. So again, of course, a huge name, Jack Schlossberg, is a huge social media personality.
Yes.
Is also a writer as well in New York, has a major presence among especially Gen Z and millennials, so that could be a big part of this race coming up. But it's going to be a crowded primary for Jerry Nadler's seat in the 12th district.
Yeah, this is a big story. I mean, I've always seen Jack on TikTok. I'm sure you guys have seen him
Yes.
as well. So big breaking news there. But right here at Fox 5 DC, we like to honor those that have served. And we hold a special place here for our veterans. And joining us now is Scott Cooper, who is somebody that has served. He is a hero. Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And it's so nice to meet you virtually. I want to talk to you about your experience as a veteran and that defining moment you've had in your career that you still remember to this day.
Oh, that's a good question. It's great to be with you tonight. What would I remember a defining moment? Boy, that's a good question. I served 5 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. Probably the ones I remember most are holidays that I spent away from my family. And so I'm really grateful that, I've spent every holiday with my family since I retired from the Marine Corps about 12 years ago. And so those holidays were really hard to miss.
That's really, again, I tell you, your story is incredible. And both my grandfathers served, so thank you for your service on behalf of them and myself. I mean, it's just incredible what you all have done for this country. Now, let me ask you this. So people look at, for Veterans Day, they want something to do. They want to give back. Again, not just have a day off, but they want to give back to the community and veterans. What do you think are the best ways that members of the Fox community here in D.C. and just around the country can really pay tribute to the veterans in their lives and the veterans that they don't know, per se?
Sure. I think one of the things that I would emphasize this Veterans Day, there's a couple days of service every year. September 11th is a National Day of Service. Martin Luther King Day is a National Day of Service. Veterans Day should be along the same lines there. And it doesn't have to be serving veterans. I would say, should be serving your community. And so where's a place that you can volunteer? If it's Paducah, Kentucky, or Casper, Wyoming, is there a place that you can volunteer? At a soup kitchen? Certainly today, you're finding that there's a need with the government shutdown for a lot of people that are going without benefits that they need. And so that's what I'd emphasize, is that where can you volunteer to help your community? And so find a place. Certainly, I'm sure that there are religious organizations that are running soup kitchens. There's other community service organizations where you can volunteer.
And when you look at like the overall, the holiday itself, and really thinking about the traditions here in D.C., are there certain events that people can go to as well to pay tribute directly to veterans, whether it be going to an event, a VFW, something like that, or are there just things they can do online as well?
Things that you can do. I would say one of the organizations that I would certainly encourage folks to get involved with, there's a great organization called The Mission Continues that a friend of mine just stepped down as their CEO, Mary Beth Brueggemann. They have service platoons, and they'll be out all around D.C. Doing things from cleaning up local parks to painting schools to volunteering around there. And so check into opportunities, I think, to volunteer. The reason that organization exists is to really take veterans and connect them to their communities through volunteering and service. And so an organization like The Mission Continues, I would absolutely encourage folks to check into things like that.
And it seems like now a lot of younger Americans feel distant from military service, or they don't feel like they want to be a part of it. How do you think we can bridge that gap?
It's a good question. There are 15.8 million veterans in America today. That's about 6% of our population. It's shrinking. 50% of veterans are over age 65. I'm not in that category. I know what you're thinking, Tony. But it's an ever decreasing percentage of America. Less than 1% serve. We're in an all-volunteer force. I volunteered to serve in the military. I don't think that makes me any better or different than other Americans. But by being in an all-volunteer force, what you find is it's fewer and fewer people that have served, and fewer and fewer people that have a connection to those who serve. One of the things I would encourage every parent to do and every young person to do is to consider spending some time serving your country. It doesn't have to be 20 years like I spent in the Marine Corps. It could be for just a couple of years. But I think what you'll find is that that time spent in the military is going to be one of the best times that you've had, and you will grow more than you probably ever will in the rest of your life. The other thing I think that it does, and you talked about how do we bridge some of this gap, it is, I think, to increase opportunities for service. And also, you should seek out those that have served, not to thank them for their service, but to maybe ask them, what was it like? What would you say was the best thing about your time serving in the military? It doesn't mean a parking spot in the front row of a convenience store, but it does mean, I think, an opportunity to say, hey, this is something that we all owe our country. I mean, we all owe our country something. You might owe it your life.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we often hear about those struggles that our veterans face when they are adjusting to normal civilian life, where it could be depression or PTSD. And how can people, as we as a community, be more supportive to veterans that are going through something like that?
Sure. I might take issue with your hypothesis there. I don't know that that veterans are necessarily struggling. Or that are, I've certainly been asked, well, you spent all this time in Iraq and Afghanistan. Are you okay? I think I'm much stronger and better because I served in the military. And so don't assume, I think, that a veteran is struggling in the transition. I would say, though, on the other hand, one of the things that it's incumbent upon everyone to think about and recognize is that the skills that I learned in the military are absolutely transferable. And so if you can imagine, I mean, for instance, Tony, what if I told you next year you have to start over? And all that time that you spent in the job that you're in, you have to start over. And where you're going to apply for your next job, they don't necessarily feel that there's any credibility with what you previously did. All those leadership skills, all those other things. And so I think be open to the idea that that time in service actually gets you someone with enormous skills. Also, they learn things like showing up on time, being unselfish, and also, contributing to the larger good. That's what you get in a military veteran.
And what would be some of the things, again, like we were talking about, veterans come home, again, veterans benefits. What are some of the things that you're seeing in your community that are some areas that, the government or just us as a country can do better in serving our veterans who served us so well?
Yeah. I could say one thing. With this shutdown, veterans are overwhelmingly affected by this. And you were just talking, recently about the shutdown in the previous part of the program. 6% of Americans are veterans, and yet 1 in 3 federal workers is a military veteran.
Wow.
Part of the reason it is the case is that veterans get a benefit in applying for federal jobs. They also want to continue to serve. They want to serve their community and their country. It's the reason that they signed up to join in the first place. And so I think as you look at what we do, as a country and the way that we treat our veterans, I think helping them transition. And so it may well be saying, hey, tell me what you did, and then what do you want to do? That's probably one of the harder things. Now, that's the reality of the military. At some point, even if you retire as a 4-star general, the military is going to say, thank you for your service, you're done. You also are going to have probably several more years of working because no one's going to retire at 65. Almost all generals are less than 65 when they retire.
Oh, wow.
And so that transition is hard. People that work for a company for 30, 40 years, they don't have to be told at age 42, hey, you have to start over with something new. And so I think being open to that, and I think also as you hear about people leaving the military, what kinds of programs do we have? There's a lot out there. Hiring Our Heroes is a tremendous program that the Chamber of Commerce runs that takes military veterans, gets them in with different companies, and helps them in that transition to see how they can transfer those skills into a civilian career.
What do you, in your experience, and again, not only yours, but the men and women that you served with, what do you think is the greatest skill that you learned from being in the military overall, and how it transferred into life post-military?
Resilience is the first one.
Great word.
The ability to endure adversity and come up stronger and better on the other side. I think the other thing I found as well, and this is something that I constantly talk about with my veteran friends and those that are considering maybe hiring a veteran, is you learn about teamwork, and that it is in fact the mission and the team that matters. In the civilian world, there's talk of looking out for number one, trying to get ahead, and criticizing someone in the military for looking out for themselves is probably the highest criticism that you could leverage against somebody. Because what really matters is what are you willing to do to be unselfish and to support the team. And so I think those skills, resilience and a willingness to do whatever it takes to help the team out. It sounds like a sports analogy, I know. It probably is.
No, it's a great one.
We love that.
Skills are what you learn in the military.
Adversity, resilience. You talked to us about so many important things, and we want to thank you so much for your service and joining us on our show. It's a huge honor, sir, for you to come on this show. So, Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you for your answers. These are fantastic.
Exactly.
I'm grateful to be with you guys.
Great
Thank you for
insight.
your
Pleasure.
And we'll be back right after this break. We're going to talk about travelers facing obstacles at the airport because of these flight cancellations. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Live Zone Prime Time. It is 9:48 right now. We are covering the shutdown for you. Of course, we have been covering the flight cancellations. A lot of travelers are facing obstacles at the airport. Now, Tony, we were talking about this. People have plans for Thanksgiving. They want to see their families. And this is going to impact Thanksgiving travel as well. Now, I know you were talking about Thanksgiving. So going to Boston, how worried are you about getting there?
I very much am, and to be honest, again, like with the schedules, again, doing stuff here with Fox and getting close to the holiday, like I'll be flying either a couple days before, or the day before Thanksgiving late. So that's of course one of the craziest travel days ever, right? There's a movie made about it called Trains, Planes, and Automobiles for all the, I would say, the boomer generation and greatest generation, and Gen X. You watch that movie more than we did as Gen Z, but a true classic. And the truth is, I mean, I am looking in the next 2 to 3 days whether to book my trip, because usually I kind of do things all at the end. It's like, okay, a couple of days before, yeah, I'll just do it. I have points. But I'm not going to take any chances this time because you just don't know. Because, again, there could be less flights or they could fill up faster. So, again, you're kind of not going to have the flight even 15, 20 days before. And then, two, those flights could be adjusted depending on if this goes, again, we talked about it in the open, where it could go from 10% reduction to 20 or 30%. How high can this go depending on the amount of weeks we have left in this shutdown? So I am very much looking at all the different flights, also tracking potentially taking a train if that needs to happen too, or getting a rental car and driving my way up 8 hours to Boston, because you know what?
8 hours.
That's without any traffic and without any stops. And for me, I need to get a couple bites to eat now and again. But again, having the stop there, I may have to do it depending on the work stoppage that's happening and the reduction of flights.
Yeah, and we're really hoping that you get to see your family not a day after Thanksgiving, but on Thanksgiving. But just like yourself, a young lady at the airport, now she's upset about all these cancellations. Let's take a listen.
Government needs to get it together, if I can say that. We are going into Thanksgiving, which is the heaviest traffic travel day of the year, and I'm hoping that we get it together. I think people are concerned. I'm concerned about my flight being delayed.
And we're following some breaking news, Tony, about the SNAP benefits.
Yes, so this is literally a couple of minutes ago, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has issued an order to pause the lower court's order that we just mentioned at the top of the show about SNAP benefits, where the Trump administration was forced to pay out the full benefits. Now the Supreme Court has put a stay on that, so the full benefits will not be going out from the administration about SNAP benefits. So it'll still be on the states as of right now, but again, it's a temporary pause from the Supreme Court. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, I'm reading it right now as we stand, again, from the New York Times. It says the Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has temporarily paused a lower court order that had required the Trump administration to fully fund food stamps during the government shutdown. In the order, Justice Jackson says that she had to issue the pause, calling it an administrative stay, to give the appeals court that will rule on this case more time to consider it. So the Supreme Court's not making a policy decision or a ruling on the merits of it. They're just putting a stay to give the appeals court more time to flush this out, and so that, again, those benefits would not go out while the decision is being made by the appeals court. So again, the Supreme Court's not stepping in on the merits of this issue.
Okay.
They're just giving the appeals court more time. Again, it has to go to the appeals court first, then it will go to the Supreme Court. But President Trump has wanted the Supreme Court to fast track this. They're not going to do that. But Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson will and has put a stay on the order from the lower court saying that the Trump administration had to fully pay out those SNAP benefits. So again, this is really, it's a developing story. That tells me that this could potentially be decided over the weekend and into early next week, and then could go to the Supreme Court, depending on the decision, by next week or the week after.
And Tony, how do you think families are going to react to this breaking news?
I mean, it's just more volatility because they don't know what they're getting. I mean, are they getting partial payments? Again, the administration is committed to paying out at least partial payments. Then they reverse and say, okay, we'll pay out the full payments. What is the court telling us? Then President Trump and the administration said to the Supreme Court, we want to pause on this. We don't want to pay out the full payments now. And now the court's coming back and, before the weekend to issue this stay. It is, I mean, it's this volatility for so many families, Syed. I mean, like when you look at it, they have to plan their monthly budgets, plus with Thanksgiving coming up and the holiday season. Again, just to stay fed through the holidays. And luckily, some of the states have enough money to supplement this, but that could be for a couple of weeks to a month. And then where do we go?
Yeah, I hate that this happens on a Friday night, especially like you said, Saturday and Sunday, and these families are going to be thinking, oh my God, I wonder what's going to happen. And parents who have to put the food on the table for little kids, I mean, this is impacting a lot of folks, especially in our area, all over the country, really, with Thanksgiving coming up. I mean, food banks are going to feel it too. There's going to be a lot of hungry mouths to feed. I'm sure food banks right now need more donors. They need more support, as well as more people are going to be lining up for turkeys, for Thanksgiving dinner. Like we mentioned, not just for travel, but this is really when families get together and, the year ends, you spend time with your family, and now that miracle, that dream of theirs is on hold with this breaking news announcement. Of course, we're going to be following this on our Fox Local app as well. But again, we want to get to more on the meeting between President Donald Trump and Hungarian Prime Minister at the White House. So let's get the latest on that.
You may want to suggest something right there, please.
Absolutely. No, nothing was uncoordinated with the White House. It's all part of the view that we have of Europe, and there will remain troops in Romania, but there's some change in how we rotate and how many we rotate.
And the relationship with Romania is very good, right?
It's very good, and we've coordinated all this with Secretary General Ruta, throughout EUCOM, throughout our allies. Everyone was notified in advance.
The relationship with Romania is very good. The relationship with Europe is very good. I disagree with what Europe is doing having to do with immigration, but I agree with them on many other subjects. We just signed the biggest trade deal ever made with Europe, $950 billion. We were able to do it because of tariffs. It was a deal that was good, very good, but we had a very unfair deal. We were treated very badly before I came into office, but we just signed. It's the single biggest trade deal ever signed. So we have a very good relationship with Europe. Yeah.
What is
is the main dispute with the Russians which prevent the Budapest summit with Putin from taking place?
The basic dispute is they just don't want to stop yet. And I think they will. I think it's taken a big toll on Russia, a big toll on both countries, obviously, but it's taken a big toll. They're losing 7,000 soldiers a week. That's a big toll. And between the two of them, divided, you know, with Russia losing more soldiers, actually. But they're both losing a lot of people. And that's the primary thing that, with me, it's not economic, it's not money. In fact, we don't spend any money. We send it to NATO. They pay us for our missiles and for our military and everything else. We don't. It's not a question of money. It was with Biden. He spent $350 billion. He got nothing for it. The war would have never happened. If I were president, the war would have never happened. I think you would agree with that. This war would never have happened if I were president. It's stupid that it happened. But it did happen. I inherited the war, and I think we're going to get it ended. Not too distant future.
Mr. President.
Yes, please.
So no question that if that time the name of the United States president would have been Donald Trump, there would be no war between Ukraine and Russia. That's clear. But what we are speaking about here is more than that, because without the pressure coming from the United States government, I'm speaking 2022, the Europeans would not take that hard line what they have today on the war. Remember that big countries of Europe rejected to be involved more than just sending some, humanitarian issues. So the pressure coming from the United States to be more pro-war in Europe. So that's the fact of the history anyway. So we have to restore something which was ruined and created from here, and that's the reason why I understand absolutely the devotion of the president now to do everything to stop the war, because that would be not that deep without the previous government pressure from here. So the reason why I'm here to be as much as helpful I can to contribute to the peace efforts of the president, because that was an enormous mistake what we have done, the Western world several years ago, and we have to stop it, and it's common responsibility.
Biden actually pushed for that war to happen. Okay, if you can believe it. Nobody can believe it, but it's one of those things. And now look what happened. Look what's happened to Ukraine. It's a much smaller country. A lot of people are dead. You take a look at it's a whole different world over there. And Russia has not been helped very much by that war either. They lost a tremendous number of soldiers and people. Look, that war should have been a one-week war. I don't know why it's taken. This is 4 years. Should have been 1 week. Should have been over with, but it would have never.
Interesting, big trade deal there, Tony.
Yeah, again, this is the relationship between Hungary's prime minister and the president is very, very close. Again, he's been, President Trump has been accused of being sort of the U.S.'s version of Viktor Orban for some of the policies related to the press and some of the policies related to the economy and some of the things that were done in Hungary in the early 2010s and beyond. But this is a strong relationship between the president and Viktor Orban. And when you look at these trade deals, and again looking at the Asia trip recently that was going on, where President Trump was able to secure a lot of at least détentes and some reductions in those trade wars, now the goal for him is to figure out the Europe situation, because again, Canada is off to the side as well because of the issue with the commercial that was launched in Canada about President Reagan being against tariffs. And this is definitely a sticking point for the president. And the biggest thing to look at is what will the ruling from the Supreme Court be in the coming weeks on this tariff issue. They will be taking up the case, and they already have taken it up. And the Supreme Court seemed a little skeptical this week in their questioning of the legal team for the president. And again, we're not going to make any predictions yet, but they seem to be skeptical of the president's use of emergency powers to enact tariffs. So that will have a major impact on these trade deals, whether it be with Viktor Orban and Hungary and parts of Europe, or potentially if Canada comes back online. And how do these deals and these sort of pauses and détentes with South Korea, Japan, and especially China, how will that play in with the potential Supreme Court ruling, and what will the logistics of that look like? So a lot of big things coming up on the European front with the president and Hungary, as well as how do they get the war finished between Ukraine and Russia and make it an equitable ending to that.
Absolutely. Tariffs, shutdown, SNAP benefits.
A lot of stuff.
You've covered a lot of that really well today.
Thank you,
and
as
we're
well.
going to keep covering that as well. Keep it locked right here. Our 10 o'clock newscast on Fox 5 coming up next. Have a great weekend.
Take care, everybody.